Good day and welcome back to the Hopkins demonstration forest. This is part 11 of what is a forest. And building on the topic of forest measurements, today we're going to talk about measuring distances in the forest and talk about a way that you can calculate a way to do those distance measurements just using your pace. But before we start doing that, let's kind of quickly, why measure distance in a forest? Well, back in video 10 there, we talked about those plots, and sometimes we want those plots spaced across an area of forest. And we might need to use some highly accurate measuring devices, or sometimes just kind of get kind of close when we're doing those tree counts. Or let's say we want to measure the area or perimeter of a certain part of the forest. Using a compass, taking some angles, measuring some distances, we can calculate that area. There's a whole lot of reasons, but we need to first talk about the one that you can do very easily and take with you almost everywhere you go, plus some of the kind of common tools we use here out in the woods. So all these tools kind of come with two things. One, they come with a cost, a price tag, and then the second, they come with an accuracy and ease of use. So I want to start with probably the cheapest thing out there, and sometimes you get these things for free, couple dollars, and they go up to maybe 10 or 15 if you get the type that's retractable. But any ruler, any type of yardstick, any tape measure you find laying around the house, it works well. But probably not sometimes the best application for measuring horizontal distance out here in the forest. If we want to measure the cross section of maybe a stump or maybe a few inches or a foot or two, it might work fine, but not the best. So we really need to get down to a couple of things. We'll start looking a little more like tapes that we'd use to measure some large areas. Those acres are pretty large, remember. So you've seen this before, a logger's tape. And then we have a fiberglass reel tape. Again, as we start going up, not much difference in accuracy, but durability for certain. And on a reel tape like this, $25, $50. Then we start getting into the metal loggers tapes with a spring loaded rather than kind of winding them back by hand. A lot more durable. We start pushing up into the $75 to $125 range. So as the usefulness goes up, durability being a part of that, price goes up. We have some other things. Sometimes you see this stuff around on sports fields and the like, and not a very good thing for the woods, a wheel, because you have to bounce over logs, and maybe good for road construction or doing the yard lines on a football field. But again, lots of low-cost ways. All that really about $100 or less, and down to a couple dollars. But if we want to get some ease of use, so we're not walking all over the place, and also some accuracy, because when we're pulling tapes around brush, they can bend and twist and get hung up. Sometimes it's really hard to pull them nice and straight because we're measuring a straight line distance. So we break into a whole other field of electronics. Some of those electronics, again, start to go up in cost, but kind of an easy one to use. This is a Sonar, or uses sound wave to measure distance. These start at a couple $100 and go up to about $1,000. So now we're starting to enter into some real cost, but the time savings is that I don't have to pull that tape measure through all the brush. If it's light brush, the sound actually travels through those little holes. Now the only challenge with this is you have to have a receiver on your tree or plot or wherever you're going, have to place it there. So you have to still walk around a little bit, but once you put this either at the center of a plot that you're measuring, or you have two people using it, makes life a lot easier. Accuracy wise, this will get you down fairly close into the inch range. Then we take a step up from that and we go into the light, the laser. Lasers, this might look like, you say, hey, that looks like something I saw at Cabela's or at the sporting goods store. Well, yeah, they do make range finders for things like hunting and golf and some kind of rough activities where a yard or so accuracy is great. But lasers in forestry, this one starts at just under $1,000. There's some models that go from about $500. Accuracy, though, as you start going up, you get a few more features and accuracy. This will measure to the nearest tenth of an inch. The nice thing about this one and this is kind of one of the cheaper ones that are out there. If I aim it at a tree that's got a little sight I look through, push the button, it bounces off the target. Challenge is brush gets in the way of the light. So it's sometimes not necessarily the greatest on the planet when there's heavy brush, but definitely a 1/10 of a foot, very accurate, much easier to use, but also very expensive. And there's some other devices that we use to measure very large areas, and they start anywhere from something you can wear on your wrist. You carry them around often in your pocket with a cell phone, but GPS units, global positioning systems. GPS can be very inexpensive, but with that inexpensive GPS comes the same thing, accuracy. So GPS units start at a few $100s, as low as even 100. And go on up into the tens of hundreds of thousands depending on your accuracy. GPS is really nice for measuring large areas. We tend not to use it to measure short distances. Sometimes we use it to establish locations or points in the forest, and we can later reference those on maps. But again, some of the devices we use. But one of the nice things that we have when it comes to measuring is our feet. So determining your pace is a great way, and a pace, it's just what it is. Walking, your normal walking, everyone walks a little different, so depending on your leg length, you know, how your stride is, and just your comfort level, you don't want to force, you just want to walk naturally and count the number of paces over a certain distance. Do that a few times, and then you can determine how long your pace is. So once you have that, and once you have it figured out, it's a great way to do some general estimations of distance. And so what I've done here is set up a little course. There's a cone down there at 100 feet. And this is what you can do at home, at your school, at wherever your location when you're outside. Get a tape measure that does 10 or 20 feet, or longer would be great. Go to a track if you have that available. It doesn't have to be 100 feet. The longer the distance, the better. But for this example, what I've done is made a little chart. So I'm going to walk down once to the cone. That's 100 feet. That's going to be my warm-up. I'm not going to count it. Then I'm going to walk back. And then I'm going to do that 2 more times out and back. So I have a total of 5 attempts at 100 feet. And I count my pace. Now, one thing with a pace, a lot of people say, is it, what is it? It's left, right. That is a pace. So both feet. You have a half step or a half pace, and then you have a full one. So I've already done 2 passes down and back. I'm going to do 1 more, and I'm going to count the number of paces, and we'll come back and calculate that. But again, 100 feet is what we're using here. The longer the better. It should be on some unobstructed flat ground. We'll talk about what you could do to improve your accuracy when you get on uneven ground. But I'm just going to start, head down real quick, count, record, and we'll get figuring out what the pace is. So I landed on 20 right here, and the starting point was just behind me at my right foot. So that's 19.5, and I had 20 on the way down. So if I look at my chart here real quick, you'll see I just made a basic graph, a little table, where I had my first attempt, my warm-up. Again, didn't count that. It's good to do a warm-up just to get your legs working. The more warm you are, the better, because you aren't just going to jump out and immediately start pacing distance. So your legs will be pretty warm, and you do. Your pace tends to stretch out a little bit as you get more relaxed. So I had 19 and a half, so that means I started my left foot, my right foot hit about the cone, and I round here. You can be a little off. On that 4th trip I just did going down, I got 20 and 19.5. So what I do is I add all those up. I add up all 5 of the paces, so 19.5, there's 4 of those, and 20. So that comes out to be 98 is the total sum of my paces for, you can think of that as 5 100-foot trips or 500 feet. But I'm just going to do an average now. Divide 98 by 5. So 95 divided by 5 is 19. Remainder is 3/5. So 3/5 is 6. So 19.6 is my average pace for 100 feet. Again, you can do a longer pace. Doing anything shorter is probably not advised. So now I take my average pace and divide it into 100. Well, first that's 5. Remainder 4, 6, and about a 1/10. So I'm going to put a 0. So my pace length is 5.1 feet. It's a good idea, though, to round your pace length to the closest half. Unfortunately, if you're at one of those folks that's at like 4.75, I mean, you go up or down. The closer your pace is to the number that you've decided to round to, the more accurate. But you need to understand, I'm going to round down here, so I'm going to say my average pace is 5 feet. So what that means is when I walk and pace out, if I had a 5-foot pace, I should be doing 20. So I'm a little over. So as I walk out, and I think I want to get 100 feet, and I walk out my 20 paces, right? Because I'm going to go count out, that'll be 5. Well, I really know I'm a little on the short side of my pacing. So I might want to adjust that a little bit. But if you think about it, 0.1 for me is about a foot off every 500 or every 50 feet. So if I was every 100 feet, by rounding that down a 1/10 on my pace, it throws me off about 2%. So I need to start thinking about that because my paces will vary. As I go uphill, your stride will shorten a little bit. As you go downhill, it'll lengthen out. So it's good to also kind of have an uphill pace and a downhill and kind of check that and see how that compares. But you need to understand, your pace is going to be, if you get really good at it, it's going to be around 5% accuracy. And a lot of times for what we're doing out here, that's actually a pretty decent ballpark. Honestly, to pull out a tape measure and stretch it out and be doing that by yourself, you get stuff tangled up, and as it bends around, you're probably looking at a couple percentage points off on the tape measure. So it's not necessarily bad, but you just need to understand the limitations, especially if you're one of those folks that has one of those paces that's right in between. And again, you could always say, hey, my pace is 5.1, but I'm not going to be pulling out my calculator. The idea behind your pace, it's simple, it's quick, it's a rough estimate that's going to get you the answers, but occasionally, and what we're going to talk about is when it is appropriate to pull out a bona fide official tape measure and get very accurate, make sure it's pulled tight and you're getting the best measurements possible. Or when appropriate and the conditions allow, to use a laser and really get a straight line shot. That's the beauty of a laser, is it gives you the exact line that you're shooting. And it also calculates for how off you are, if you're pointing up or downhill, if you want to get a horizontal distance, if you want to get the distance from where you're looking up to an object or down. That's what the beauty of the laser is. So what you need to do, get a piece of paper, find the best tape measure you can and the longest, and measure out 100 feet. Walk it as many times as you can. I would have done this probably 10 or 20 if I really wanted to get my accuracy down. Go uphill, see what that is. Go downhill, find a nice steeper road that you can do that on. See the difference. So you can get an idea of how to use that measuring tape that's right below your feet. And again, once you get your pace, once you learn it, you'll always have it. So that's pacing and how to determine distance. We'll be working with some of those more accurate tools a little later on, but hope you enjoyed that and get out there and get that pace figured out. Thanks a lot. Have a good day.